Tenía 7 años apenas 7 años. ¿Qué 7 años? No llegaba a 5 siquiera. De pronto unas voces en la calle me gritaron: ¡Negra! 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 ¿Soy acaso negra?, me dije. ¡Sí! ¿Qué cosa es ser negra? ¡Negra! Yo no sabía la triste verdad que aquello escondía. ¡Negra! Y me sentí negra. ¡Negra! Como ellos decían. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Como ellos querían. ¡Negra! Yo odié mis cabellos y mis labios gruesos y miré apenada mi carne tostada y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! 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 Y pasaba el tiempo y siempre amargada seguía llevando a mi espalda mi pesada carga. ¡Y cómo pesaba! Me alacé el cabello, me polvé la cara, y entre mis entrañas siempre resonaba la misma palabra: ¡Negra! 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 Hasta que un día que retrocedía y que iba a caer. ¡Negra! 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 ¿Qué? ¿Y qué? ¡Negra! ¡Sí! ¡Negra! ¡Soy! ¡Negra! ¡Negra soy! ¡Negra! ¡Sí! ¡Negra! ¡Soy! ¡Negra! ¡Negra soy! Y hoy en adelante no quiero laciar mi cabello. ¡No quiero! Y voy a reírme de aquellos que por evitar, según ellos, que por evitarnos algún sinsabor, llaman a los negros gente de color. ¿Y de qué color? ¡Negro! ¿Y qué lindo suena? ¡Negro! ¿Y qué ritmo tiene? ¡Negro, negro, 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 negro! Al fin comprendí. ¡Al fin! Ya no retrocedo. ¡Al fin! Y avanzo segura. ¡Al fin! Avanzo y espero. ¡Al fin! Y bendigo al cielo porque quiso Dios que negro azabache fuese mi color y ya comprendí. ¡Al fin!
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to today's show. That powerful video was from an Afro-Peruvian woman that was a choreographer, composer, and activist. And her name is Victoria Santa Cruz. She passed away about 6 years ago. And it was good to frame our conversation. We're going to have a community discussion today. Thank you, all of you, for joining in and for watching either live or, after this is recorded and posted on social media. This is Unity Coalition, Coalición Unida, which is the first organization in South Florida that serves the LGBTQ, Latino, and Hispanic communities. And today we have some excellent guests for our show, which is especially sponsored by Gilead Sciences and also by Ambiente Magazine. Our guest today would be Mr. Paul Thomas. We also have myself as a guest, and we also have our host that I am standing in for, and that would be Mr. John Buckley and Miss Samantha LeTroy from Unity Coalition. And it's really good to be here and really start this discussion, about race, about racial injustice, discrimination, and as it intersects into our lives when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the social movement. We want to highlight a few of the news for today. DC Mayor Bowser has Black Lives Matter painted on the street leading to the White House. The act was intended to honor protesters who had peacefully assembled earlier this week. After Trump celebrated unexpectedly good job numbers today, and then briefly alluded to a fight for equal justice under the law, he said he hoped George Floyd, who died after a Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes, was looking down and celebrating this great day. And also, the Pentagon orders active duty military police unit to the Washington, D.C. region amid protests. That is our news for today. You see there on the side, I live in Washington, D.C., and this is on K Street near 16th Street, which leads right up to the White House lawn. And the city has painted that street in a big Black Lives Matter piece of art. And we have here some of our guests for today. Tiffany Fantasia, who is really well known in South Florida, needs no introduction for anybody. If you do need to have an introduction of Tiffany Fantasia, then you need to do more research into your South Florida history. And we have Paul Thomas there. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, everyone.
You want to introduce yourself to everyone here online?
Me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Thomas. I'm a healthcare professional and an activist for about, geez, do I have to say how many years? I think we added up about 34 years now. And I would like to thank Herb and Unity Coalition for having this today and throughout the week, and for asking me to participate today. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have Tiffany Fantasia. Can you hear us, Tiffany?
Okay,
Tiffany, can you hear us? We're trying to get
right now. Hi. I can't hear you. My name is Tiffany Fantasia. I'm an entertainer. Is my sound out? Is that what it is? I don't know what happened. How that happened? I don't know what. Oh my God. Okay, I don't know what to press. Cause girl. Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, I don't know how that changed, but I still can't hear Aryah. Tiffany Fantasia. South Beach entertainer. I'm so glad to be here to talk about some issues and get down to the get down with what's going on today.
very true, very true. So for both of you, with the instability that we're living in, as well as on the brink of liberation as Black peoples, how have you been taking care of yourself, and engaging in self-care during this time?
I can't hear you.
Hi. For myself, I even prior to this, I had learned a while ago, because I kind of been doing this for a while, that self-care and taking care of oneself is the most important thing in my day, just in my daily day, pre-COVID, pre the great protests that are going on now. And so my challenge has been with all the added kind of energy and emotions, the added phone calls. I'm so grateful. So many people from around the country and around the world have reached out to me and wanted to have private conversations about what's going on and how they feel, and and so with that added conversation and kind of emotion, I've really had to make it a point to make self-care the number one thing. And I've had to make it a point to uh, step away from my social media for an hour and go get a haircut. I've made it a point to, luckily, I have two dogs. And so they make me have to stop what I'm doing and go walk them, and I take that time to not be on my phone, not be communicating, and just kind of look around me and remember that I live in South Beach and that it's beautiful and that it's all going to be okay. Um, and so that's just like a little bit of what I've been doing, making sure that I keep that uh, first. So that when I get back and I have to answer the phones and the call and the emails and the Facebook, um, that I'm in a better space because this isn't productive just in emotion. Um, and so for me, I have to be able to make sure that I keep that separation so that I can have these conversations
Mhm.
and not let it drain me and not let me react um, and let me be available to add whatever experience I have to the conversation. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, Tiffany, can you hear this us now? Tiff, can you hear? Let's see if we can get Tiffany to give.
I am to self care. I'm really just, watching my favorite TV shows. I'm watching X-Men right now. Um, the '90s one when it's really good. Um, just eating at home, watching movies. Nothing too crazy. I'll go out to the now that the parks are open. I go out to the parks every now and then. Um, and like I'll walk around for a bit, or I'll go driving. Like I'll just drive to Fort Lauderdale and drive back, just so that I'm not in my apartment. If I had a balcony or a yard, I would probably just be home. But I do those little things so at least I'm out in some way, shape, or form. So that's pretty much all I've been doing. And I've done a couple of shows online, and I have what else? What else? What else? Started working on some business stuff, but that's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay, good. So, with everything that's going on, what do you two thinks what needs to happen right now, while we're going through, the liberation and the visibility towards, the things that we daily and for many years in all our lives have dealt with.
Well,
Paul?
for me, I think that people don't really want to have a lot of overly long conversation about these issues, right? And I think that what really needs to happen is that we need to see immediately concrete steps of change, um, not just policy, but within employment, within housing, within what type of resources get to which communities and why, and have really hard looks at those numbers and make the changes that we have to make. I've read in the news that some of the uh, cities are quote unquote defunding the police departments. And what that means is it doesn't really mean that they're taking the police off the street or taking all the money, but they're re looking at the idea of policing and of having safer communities instead of needing police to make communities safe. And so some of the conversations that I've had, people have asked me, what does that mean? Um, and using a public health model, it means that making sure that every community has access to healthcare and a hospital and a doctor. It means making sure that every community has access to a great supermarket. Tiffany and I live here in South Beach. I don't even know how many supermarkets with fresh fruit, fresh vegetables that we have within a couple of blocks. Not every community has that. So that every community has somewhere to work, that there's employment, that people are able to work. Because when you have these things in your community, then you don't feel the inequities, right? There's a lot of people just living in survival mode, day in and day out for years, and we just can't continue on this way. So I think
Mhm.
actual change as opposed to long-term conversations. No
Yeah.
10-year plans. That's what I keep telling everybody. I don't want to hear about a 10-year plan. I want to hear about what are we going to do by next week.
Think about all different times. Tiffany, I know that you've been really a part of enacting change, especially like on a local level. You've been to city meetings, you've stood up for certain policies that needed to happen, specifically for Miami Beach. So, what do you recommend people do? What's the need when we look at local politicians and when we look at, law enforcement and just the whole judicial system?
At this point, because honestly, I'm tired of talking about the same thing over and over and over again. I think from a local, state, and federal level, we need to adopt policies that need to be turned into law and hold these people to the fire. If they're being elected to enact change, baby, you need to do it within the first few years. And if you say you need us to elect certain other people to help make this change happen, then we need to do that on our end as citizens. Get these laws changed, get these procedures changed. And for law enforcement in particular, I truly feel there needs to be a change within the way unions do things. I have heard from chief of polices themselves, we have such and such person has a rap sheet so long of complaints, but we can't fire him because of the fact that the unions won't let them. So whatever's going on there that is letting bad cops be have the ability to stay on a job needs to be handled, because right now, to my knowledge, outside of maybe being a politician, being a police officer is one of the few jobs where you can have over 70 complaints and still have a job. Because anywhere I tried to work, you couldn't have that many complaints and be able to work. So there's something wrong. There's too much protection, and these people need to be held to the fire when they do something wrong, because it leads to the situations that happen where an officer is on somebody's neck because they've had all these complaints. They think they can get away with anything. They get this attitude and whatnot. They think they can get away with it. So we need to put policies together and say change these laws and stop covering these people's behinds. Either they need to be going to jail, or we need to be able to sue the hell out of them when they mess up and kill somebody who was unarmed.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a more complex conversation, than just F the police type of thing. It's about, like you said, more of the internal policies. I mean, we have community members and leaders, like Juan Sanchez, who is a retired detective from the Miami Beach Police Department. It's about creating the right type of work environments for law enforcement officials so that it makes it easy and without any type of punitive way for officers and fellow officers to report things, to give warnings before something actually does happen. um, Getting more of our community, getting actual, mandating that you have to have a Black person within your community review board for, each precinct and each jurisdiction, as well as everyone having an LGBT community representative and a trans representative, so that, you know, you're getting your education from people who are actually living, you know, under these conditions that historically we already, as soon as we come into this world, we're already addressed with, you know, lack of access to health care and protections, and being able to get a job that's well paying and you can have a good quality of life type of thing. But any other suggestions of what people can do?
For either one of us. I mean, for myself, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Oh, that you're gonna read that?
No, keep going.
Oh, you were saying for what can people do? You know what? People on the individual end, we have to start to really immediately get more involved, right? And be active in what's happening in our local communities, especially politically. I know in my generation, we were kind of raised to like not be involved. It's like you just talk about politics, but that was a way of controlling people, right? We have to talk about it because these things are controlling our lives. The decisions that are being made are directly affecting um, everybody in the community. And so if you're not part of that conversation, then you get left out, just like you were saying. Everyone has to be at the table, but on an individual uh, point of view, people really have to get involved. I sit on a couple of different political PACs, and you know, I sit down and I talk to people running for office face to face, and I stay in touch with them when they win. You know, making sure that, like Tiffany was saying, that people are actually living up to the promises that they made. Um, One really important part of our society that I think most communities don't, and that communities, no matter where you live, that people don't really look at is the judicial system. And people
Mm-hmm.
understand how important a judge is in your community, the type of decisions that they're making, and who that person is that has that public position becomes very, very, very vital to our rights, right down to our civil rights. And you can see the battle now with, you know, judges being appointed because there's a belief that they have a certain viewpoint and that they will actually take away people's civil rights.
Mhm.
And
And that's
so
a part of
we have to,
polling too. That is
yeah.
a
And so
part
we,
of polling. We can decide who, you know, who would be judges in our area. And that also, well, that brings in our next guest, Tremaine Jones of the Freedom Fund. You know, Tremaine, I know that you work in, you know, in kind of navigating the prison system when it comes to incarcerated peoples. You want to give us an introduction as to you and what you do?
Sure. Can you hear me, Aryah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, good afternoon. My name is Tremaine Jones. I am the project director at the Freedom Fund. And the Freedom Fund is a nonprofit organization that secures the safety and liberty of people in jail and immigration detention. We're a Broward-based organization, so our office is in Fort Lauderdale, and we do work throughout South Florida, so Bay, Broward, Palm Beach. Just to highlight a little bit of the work that we do, we initially post bail for low-income LGBTQ identified people who are in jail and immigration detention. We also provide post-release support, so that includes case management. We provide a lot of court advocacy support. We have monthly meetings to discuss issues on how people can advocate for themselves while they're going through trial. Outside of that, we recently have been doing two additional campaigns and programs. One was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw that because jails are not the best place for people to be in, it's actually one of the most unsafe places for people to be in because COVID can spread like wildfire, and it has been spreading like that since COVID came on the scene. we've been doing a statewide bailout across the state of Florida to get people out of jail. And with everything that's happening recently with the killing of George Floyd, Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, we have been posting bail for people who are protesting and also people who have gotten arrested because of the violation of parole that's been happening throughout South Florida.
Thank you for that, Tremaine. Thank you. And what areas do you cover?
So the Freedom Fund posts bail in South Florida. So we cover Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach. However, because of the stuff that we're doing now due to COVID, we're also doing a statewide bailout. So I can't remember, I should actually write that down, of all of the counties we have been covering. However, we've been covering as north as Duval County and also the Panhandle, to as south as Monroe County, like Key West. So we've been covering quite a bit of counties throughout the state of Florida.
Yes, yes.
There we go.
And so I know that you and and also Paul has had a history within like healthcare and whatnot. And going, I saw a meme recently that was like, "Oh, it's already riot season. I already have my COVID-19 decorations out." And in dealing with both of those things at the same time, both of which are already highly impacting Black communities, and then also looking at the higher rate of incidences when it comes to HIV and unemployment. How do you see all of that kind of intersecting currently?
Would you like to go first, Paul?
Sure.
Right.
Sure. For me, it's been a big concern of mine. From the beginning of the COVID issue, I keep contacting our local elected officials and other people and reminding them that, Miami-Dade County is #1 in HIV transmission in the country. That hasn't changed. And that we have to, what I keep doing is trying to keep the FQHC and our community health centers on the different agendas. They keep leaving us out and off. I'm often on Zoom calls and they're bragging about what they provided to UN. And I keep explaining to them, our community doesn't go to UN for their primary care. Our community goes to their local community health centers, right? And because that's where they're getting their HIV treatment, and that's where they're getting their PrEP, and that's where they are doing their labs. And so they're already our patients, except we're being left out of the equation when it comes to COVID testing and different things. And so I keep bringing this up. I've had the support of quite a few organizations who, when I email DC, right now I can tell you that as we're reopening, the community health centers that I deal with are putting people back on the lab schedules, hunting people down, trying to get people back into care. This is a big concern for our community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tremaine?
Yes, I think a lot of these issues was occurring before COVID. So Black people and other people of color were forcibly impacted by different health issues, by different social issues. And oftentimes it was because we didn't have the access to resources. We didn't have the access to go see a primary care physician because of wealth inequality, right? And because we didn't have just the resources. And so I think with COVID, coming onto the scene, based on what the symptoms were, and based on who was at risk, we were seeing that a lot of people were disproportionately impacted because we don't have access to healthcare. We don't have access. We oftentimes don't have access to just really nutritious food, right? We're, you know, a lot of places in Miami and across the country, we live in food deserts. And that pretty much is that we don't have access to go to a Whole Foods or, you know, a Publix. It's not as easily accessible compared to other neighborhoods like Aventura or North Miami Beach. Like, a lot of those resources aren't as readily available, and so it makes it a challenge for people to just get access to general resources. And I'll speak from, you know, just quickly my own experience. Back in April, a few days after my birthday, I was having COVID symptoms. So I was having the shortness of breath. I was having just other symptoms related to COVID, and me as someone who has been doing public health for the last since 2012, 2011, so almost 10 years. I know how to navigate the system in a way that works for me. I have health insurance, but even with that, getting tested I had to wait at least 3 to 4 weeks to get tested for COVID, even through a lot of these places that were doing like pop-up testing. And mainly because they felt that I wasn't having enough, I wasn't having the right symptoms, right? So I was having the shortness of breath, but I wasn't having the fever. And so they felt that, you know, I wasn't good enough to have a test, right? And so we're also talking about the history of Black people not being seen as fully like human, or we're seen as stronger or tougher. Like, there's a systematic history of how Black people are being treated, right? And so when it comes to the healthcare system, so we're dying at large rates because people aren't taking our symptoms seriously. And on top of that, we also don't have a lot of the resources when it comes to making sure that we get access. Thankfully, I got tested and my results came up negative for COVID. But as someone who, you know, has experience and know how to navigate through these these systems, excuse me, it was hard for me. It took 2 to 3 weeks. Now, imagine someone who don't have the resources, don't have the access to be able to get access to that information. And so I think when we're talking about, like, you know, COVID, people were already upset. People already, you know, feeling a certain way about not having the access and the resources to even get testing. Now you're talking about the continuous shooting of unarmed Black people that's happening in this country, and people are fed up. People are frustrated, and I think this is a great opportunity for not just. I think there's different ways to look at this, and I think we need to be holding our officials accountable, but we also need to be holding organizations accountable. You know, what are local organizations doing to make sure that people are being taken care of? What are organizations doing, and what are the statements that they're making around, you know, what's happening to Black lives? Because if the conversation isn't around, like, how are we supporting Black folks during this hard time, then we really need to be looking at these organizations to say, hey, do we want to continue investing in these organizations and these companies? Are they, you know, making sure that their staff are being safe? Are they having these conversations? Are they putting out statements? Because that's going to make the world a difference of how we make sure Black folks get the access, and also to make sure that Black lives aren't being killed. It doesn't just start with city, local, and state officials. It also starts in the organizations that we're involved with and that we give money to.
Yeah, well, there you go. Agencies, organizations, you know, get on it. When it comes, and also when it comes to the individual, like Tiffany, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can't hear the other
Okay.
two.
So what's your take, like, for a Black person living in South Florida, under, you know, we know how life is. Maybe you want to give a little soundbite on, like, what life is for a Black person in South Florida. What can we do as far as the movement?
Well, what it's like for a Black person in South Florida? It's not easy. It's you can be when you're trying to, for the ones that are trying to climb up to become better people and have good jobs and everything, you find yourself really stumped by prejudices from other people. So it makes it that much harder. And then when you do find yourself in a good spot, you have people feel that you're there because they have to abide by the law of oh my goodness, the civil rights law, affirmative action. So those jokes and whatnot come into play. So you really have to have your head on your shoulders and be strong about wherever you're trying to go in life, especially in South Florida. Um, what can we do? What we need to do now? I feel um, there's many different layers, or steps, I should say. I think we really need to focus on a making sure our children are educated and getting a proper education so that they can do what they need to do and excel in life. I think we need to get together and have our leaders first, our black leaders hear us, and then our black leaders go to the mayors, the chief of polices, and say, this is what needs to happen, and enact those policy changes, put in place those laws so that we can move forward and feel more comfortable, like we don't have to be on eggshells every time we're walking around the corner and we see a police car, because we're afraid they might get trigger happy and claim they're scared for their life and we're dead. So I think those are some of the things that need to be in place so that if it happens, they're held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, truthfully, I feel it's going to be a long time before stuff like this doesn't happen, because there's always going to be that one jerk. So the least we can do is have policies and procedures and laws in place that help protect us when if a situation like this happens again.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so true. You know, it's about accountability. Accountability is justice. You know,
Yes.
and it's the lack of accountability that's leading us to see this. You know, when you see the lack of respect for a trans person or a gay person, especially if they're already black, you know,
Yeah.
you see a lot of our cases going unsolved when it comes to our violence against our bodies, you know, or not enough really investment within the investigations as to, you know, deaths that happen to Black people
Yeah.
across the country, and you know, and no accountability when it comes to privilege. You know, and according to where you're at, your privilege does look different. And
Yeah.
so, you know, in South Florida, the Latino Hispanic community carries a lot more privilege than like in other parts of Florida.
Mhm.
Um, but Paul or Tremaine, you want to talk a little bit more about being Black in South Florida and you know connected to this movement?
Yeah, and I just want to really just piggyback on what Tiffany said, because I thought that was just really important of like making sure organizations hold a lot of these city officials accountable. And there are really great organizations locally in South Florida that are doing great work, that have been doing great work before this occurred, and continues to really excel at really advancing and looking at ways of making sure that city officials hold themselves accountable. And so, like I mentioned before, like we really need to be looking at the organizations that we support, that do a lot of the things in South Florida that are LGBT identified, and really seeing what are they doing in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So I would just really like to start there in regards to like what are these organizations and companies doing, and then from there, you know, looking at some of the local organizations like FemPower, which is an organization located in Miami, is has been doing work for the last few years, and recently they created a community bail fund to support people who have been arrested, and they're led by Black and queer femme identified people in Miami. So that's one organization to support. Also looking at local people who are doing work. So I just really want to highlight and just remind people, since we're in Pride Month, that Pride Month wouldn't be nothing if it wasn't for Stonewall, and how Stonewall started by Black people, by a Black trans woman, by a Black lesbian woman, by brown folks. We got our rights because of these people really sacrificing. And so I just want to make sure, there's a phrase that says, give people their flowers while they're still here. And one way that we can continue to support people who are doing this work is by supporting them personally. So not just supporting the organization they work for, but supporting them personally. And so I want to give a big shout out to Brielle Roundtree, who's been doing a lot of work for different organizations, not just locally, but nationally. And I just want to put her Cash App out there. Her Cash App is beautiful, the number 1 star. Give to people who are not only doing work with organizations, but to themselves, because it takes a lot of emotional labor to do this work. I also want to highlight, if organizations or if people in your lives are really struggling to really understand what everything is about, it's a really good and important opportunity to really have those conversations and issues. But if you need some support, there are people who are doing work around this. Lucy Segu, who has been doing this work for a really long time and has worked for organizations. She's a Black, queer, Haitian organizer and social work that's been doing work locally and across the country. She's known as a social justice doula, and she does work around just really addressing like racism, homophobia, transphobia. Like, she really talks about that. And so I just really, if you want to know more information, you should check out her website, lutzesegu.com, LUTZESEGU. She does this work with organizations and companies. So if you really want to learn more about this work, you really want to invest in Black lives and looking at how can you support people who are Black, look at Lutzy. 2 more I want to mention real quick is the Black Lives Matter Alliance Broward. They did they actually was one of the several organizations that led the protests in Broward County. And also Dream Defenders has been doing a lot of work in Miami-Dade and Broward. And when we're talking about officials and city officials and state officials, we really need to be looking at the people who are currently doing the work. And are they supporting Black lives? Are they supporting Black LGBT lives, right? And, I just want to really highlight, 2 people who are doing really great work, and that's Jasmine Rogers Shaw and also, sorry, I forgot. Jasmine Rogers Shaw has been doing a lot of work locally and across the state of Florida. So when you're looking at people to support, please really pay attention. Pay attention to who's supporting you. Pay attention to the issues that are concerning of you, and support people who are running for office or people who have been doing the work already.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I will also want to add to that list Nadege Green, who worked for WLRN and is an amazing journalist and friend. Jasmine McKenzie at Pride Lines, who's really starting to do a lot of work in kind of building up her leadership and building out some programs with some online shows over this month. Tatiana Braxton with Trans Inclusive Group. That offers a lot of assistance specifically to Black transgender and gender nonconforming individuals within South Florida. Trinice Bryant with the Miami Worker Center that's been helping with like housing, people rights for undocumented individuals and workers' rights as well within Miami specifically. Sister U, I believe, is a name of another organization that you can always donate to. And of course, here at Unity Coalition. But thank you for that, Tremaine, and thank you for sparking those shout outs. Paul, did you have anything to say on that?
Just real quickly, because unfortunately I have to leave soon, but what I would like to say, and I think for me this has been really important in my life, and is individual self-empowerment. All of the work that people are doing is so important, and the resources, but I think it's so important that I say to people often when I go around and speak, I say to them, you have to realize that everything I'm doing, you can do. I'm no one special, right? You can vote. You can email your local representatives. You can go to a commission meeting. You can sit on committees. You can be involved. And why that's so important is because people have been caught up in systems not really doing anything for generations, forever, right? Not realizing that they have the power themselves, right? And that's what I would like to leave everyone with is, you know, when we talk about education, well, that's nice, except if the school isn't funded, right, and it's filled with bullet holes and there's no AC and the meals are horrible, kids are not going to get a good education, right? So you have to show up at the school board meeting and you have to be involved and you have to let your voice heard, and anyone can do it. So this is my most important message to anyone who's listening is self-empowerment. Don't think it's for other people to do. Don't wait on Black leaders to do it for you. Show up yourself. Send the email yourself. You don't have to wait. It's nice to have the resource and other people to lead on and help guide you. But remember that everything that we do, you can do. And I encourage people to do that because we need your voices as well. And that's all that I have. And I will thank you again for letting me be here today.
Thank you for being here, Paul. Thank you. And for joining and contributing to this conversation that we're having. Tiffany, any while you both are still here, Tremaine and Tiffany, like as far as like the pride flag, I know lately there's been a like kind of a redoing and trying to make it more inclusive to have a Black and brown representation as well as a trans representation. What are your thoughts on a modified pride flag? Tremaine?
I think it's great. I mean, when we're, we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for Black and brown LGBT folks putting in the work in Stonewall and in other movements throughout time. So I think it's great, that, they added the Black and brown to the rainbow flag. And what's disappointing though is to see a lot of the resistance towards it. And it just really goes to show that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done within the LGBT community around racism, around sexism, around transphobia. We oftentimes have a conversation around how the LGBT community is inclusive and we are one big happy family. But when it comes really down to like something as simple as issue of including Black and brown and trans identities into this flag that is supposed to be inclusive, there's so much backlash against it. And that really just goes to show that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in order to change the conversation that's happening with our own community. If we're talking about equality for all, we need to be very clear in regards to how that looks like. And so we're saying that we want to make sure that all LGBT people are being included and are really changing what's happening in our society. So we need to be making sure that we're including Black, brown, trans, non-binary people to be a part of that conversation. Because if we're not including those folks or if we're silencing those people, then it's a waste of our time to be showing up in these spaces. And just one more thing I want to add, just to really just piggyback on Paul's comment. I want to be very mindful of folks. Like there are well-intentioned people out there who don't identify as Black that want to do great work, and I think that's really important, and that's great because that shows that you're committed to making sure that Black people are safe and Black people are not being discriminated against. But I really want you to be careful before you go out there and, say what you're going to say, because if you're saying things that doesn't benefit the lives of Black people and Black bodies, then you're pretty much wasting your conversation. So I would really just suggest, if you want to be heard, or if you want to do something, check in with people who are doing the work, who are Black, that can really just give you some advice or steer you in the right direction. Because we want to make sure that in this moment, when people are angry and upset and want to do something about it, that we're really being intentional with what we're doing. And so if people are doing things that really leads to an end, that doesn't lead to a conclusion or an end, then it's wasting potential opportunity that could have been there. So I would just really stress people be mindful where they're putting their energy and checking in with Black folks who are doing the work, the really important work, to make sure that their energy that they're putting into is going to a conclusion that can help move the movement along.
Thank you. So, focus on your personal inventory, people, and be introspective on yourself, and not only, be apologetic and give yourself permission for things, but also, make sure you're aware of your privileges and how you're using those privileges for those who don't have those. I'm so happy to have our hostess here, Miss Samantha. Hey, Samantha. Tiffany, can we get any last words from you two before I hand it over to the lovely host?
Yes, I hope that, first of all, I want to say hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me here. And also, thank you, Aryah Lester, for amazing introduction, and also everything that you've been doing for our community, as I say. Um, Guys, it's been a hard time for everybody, not only for a specific community, it's for everybody. We all been affected for the situation that's been happening. So I'm back here just to stay connected with our people. And remember, this is Unity Coalition TV. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 4 p.m. on Facebook Live, and then 5 p.m. here on Instagram, on YouTube. So guys, thank you for everything that you.
Yes, thank you for everything. Looks like we got John Buckley there too. Hey, John, look, our original co-hosts are finally here. I can hand over the baton.
Thank you so much for taking over today for me. Unfortunately, I ran into an emergency situation at work and I couldn't get away in time to host the show, but thank you all so much for your input, your voice, your continued efforts, and all that we're doing in this moment and in this time. I can't stress enough how important it is that we stand together, we stand united, and we continue to fight for what's right and what we need within this world and our communities. So thank you to all the guests that have joined us from the beginning of the week all the way up until today. This isn't the first or last that you're going to hear of this, and just be ready to continue on with the movement.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Tiffany, any last words?
And thank you guys for having me. I really had a good time. I hope that you did too. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this conversation, and I hope that there are many, many more. And good luck, stay strong, be vigilant, and we'll get through this. Mwah.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, take care of yourselves. Know that this is a turmoil time, but also a hopeful time. And, hopefully this will enact a lot of change that'll have its repercussions and waves for Black people that come, generation after us, and the next one, and the next one, and the next. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aryah. Thank you, Tremaine. Thank you, John Buckley. Thank you guys for everything. You've been doing a great job. I know we continue fighting for our community, and the best way is love, respect each other, and stay connected with UCTV because we have the best information for you, right?
That's right.
And then before to continue, remember that this is UCTV, and every Friday we got UCTV Got Talents. Remember, Friday, June 12th is going to be 2020. Remember, this year, June 12th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sassy Singer, Diva Dancers, Perky Performance, and Witty Writers. Join our virtual talent show next Friday. The winner will be receiving a travel apothecary, self-care gift and product. Yes, honey, because it's the time to take care about yourself. Use the hand sanitizer, wash your hands, and protect yourself and protect your lover. So put your mask on and make it fashionable, right? So everybody, this is the time just to say thank you so much for watching us. Remember, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 4 p.m. here on Facebook Live, on 5 p.m. on Instagram and YouTube. This is UCTV. See you next time.